What you're about to see is a former U.S. intelligence official in July 2023 testifying under oath regarding the U.S. government's interaction with unidentified extraterrestrial aircraft and their unusual pilots.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
No, your ears aren't deceiving you. United States Air Force officer and intelligence official David Grush, among other government officials, is genuinely claiming that we are not alone in the universe, and that, in fact, the U.S. government has been keeping the world in the dark about some truly crazy findings for years. Have extraterrestrials really been visiting and even spying on us for decades? Today, we'll be attempting to get to the bottom of that question. From mysterious snapshots of unexplainable flying objects to official government reports and a possible interview with an alien being, here's some of the best evidence we have proving aliens exist. This first story has been corroborated by multiple highly reliable military personnel and is probably the most striking proof of alien life, or technology, visiting Earth. And that's why I'm going to explain it first and in depth. We even have the footage to prove it. It goes like this. A naval strike group, led by the U.S. aircraft carrier the USS Nimitz, was conducting pre-deployment exercises off the northwest coast of Mexico in late 2004. On the 10th of November, the USS Princeton picked up unusual radar signals near San Clemente Island. These signals didn't appear as any known aircraft and would randomly appear in groups of 5 to 10 at a time. The senior operator of the radar system had almost 2 decades of experience working with these systems and was an expert with this scientific system at the time of the incident, so he was puzzled as to what was going on. Suspecting a malfunction, the recently upgraded Spy-1 radar was switched off and recalibrated. To everyone's surprise, this only led the radar tracks to become even stronger. They observed firsthand how the targets performed physics-defying feats. For example, the objects moved too fast to be birds, too slow to be conventional aircraft, and in some cases, descended from space to sea level in seconds. Imagine dropping in altitude from over 20,000 meters in mere seconds. Now that's turbulence. Then the objects would hang around for hours. These observations were witnessed for multiple days. Each time they occurred, the crew would view these tiny specks moving irregularly in the distance through their high-powered binoculars on board. Then, on the morning of November the 14th, something extraordinary unfolded. Strike Fighter Squadron 41 took off from the aircraft carrier on a regular training operation when suddenly these mysterious radar tracks were spotted again. Lieutenant Douglas Kurth was instructed to investigate the unknown target approaching from the south. As he made his way to the coordinates, he saw a large disturbance in the water and claims to have seen something submerged just below the surface. He said it reminded him of a submarine or ship below the surface of the ocean. The strike group of ships did include the USS Louisville, a nuclear submarine, and it was in the vicinity, so it could have been the reason for the turbulence in the water. But what was witnessed later makes that idea seem implausible. You see, Kurth was joined by 2 other fighter jets, both containing 2 people each, the lead of which was piloted by Commander David Fravor. Fravor also claimed to have seen the disturbance on the ocean and described it as much larger than a submarine. As Kurth made his way back to the Nimitz, Commander Fravor and his wingman decided to take a closer look. Now, I'm going to show you the clip of Commander Fravor explaining this encounter in his own words in front of Congress, animating the story as he goes.
We arrived at the location at approximately 20,000 feet in a controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All 4 of us, because we were in F-18Fs, so we had pilots and Wizzo in the back seat, Looked down a small, saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water like a ping pong ball. There were no rotors, no rotor wash, or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings. As we started clockwise towards the object, my Wizzo and I decided to go down and take a closer look with the other aircraft staying in high cover to observe both us and the tic-tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the tic-tac, or we considered 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the tic-tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the tic-tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingmen, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cat point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute. You can calculate the speed." We returned to Nimitz. We were taking off our gear. We were talking to one of my crews that was getting ready to launch. We mentioned it to them, and they went out and luckily got the video that you see, that 90-second video.
As Commander Fravor's group returned to the aircraft carrier, he briefed the next flight crew that was departing and told them to be on the lookout. The crew heading out was equipped with an advanced targeting, forward-looking infrared camera system, which was controlled by the weapons system operator seated behind the pilot, who was Chad Underwood. Can we just appreciate that name for a second? Chad Underwood, the frat boy to rule all frat boys. Anyway, minutes after departing, Underwood locked onto something on his radar a few tens of kilometers away. Underwood said,
"The part that drew our attention was how the object wasn't behaving within the normal laws of physics."
Now, let's watch the video which supposedly recorded the craft. As you can see, the black and white version of the video is in infrared, and Underwood changes to visible light, revealing the blurry oval object in the distance. He then changes back to infrared and toggles his zoom numerous times. Suddenly, the UFO disappears off the side of the screen. Unfortunately, the target was too far away to be seen with the naked eye, and Underwood nor his pilot made visual contact. Following their encounter, the Naval Strike Group continued detecting anomalous radar tracks for at least 2 more days. Skeptics have tried to explain the footage as being an airplane of some sort, but airplanes can't zip around the sky as if gravity is non-existent. And whilst the witness accounts are so extraordinary that you may assume they're made up, consider that dozens of high-ranking and highly reliable military personnel have corroborated the stories. Commander Fravor, along with other witnesses, also claimed they saw an extended version of the video that was in a higher resolution, but it has never been released. All footage from the events were supposedly erased the evening of the day they were recorded. Numerous witnesses on both ships in the strike group also claim they saw 2 men arrive by helicopter who collected the relevant data before wiping all the tapes and hard drives clean. The witnesses said they never saw anything like it before. Potentially, this could be evidence of a cover-up of some kind. Maybe the government is aware of the existence of alien life or technology, but they don't want all of us aware of them for one reason or another. Maybe the government assumes there would be a mass hysteria they would like to avoid, or maybe they're just keeping it a secret so our adversaries are kept in the dark. It could also be the case that these sightings are just of top-secret military technology, like drones or aircraft that the government is taking active steps towards keeping under covers. We know they are developing incredible tech, but still, surely gravity-defying tic-tacs are a step too far. We can only wonder what the flight crews saw that day, but my mind does wonder. All we know is that Commander Fravor estimated the craft to be roughly 12 to 15 meters long and looked like a tic-tac. Were the tic-tacs opaque, looking somewhat like the typical UFOs we're used to? Or did the tic-tacs have cockpits with alien pilots controlling the craft, only zooming off after their operation was foiled? Unfortunately, we will never know. But what we do know is that this wasn't an isolated incident, as I will explain later. The Secrets of Area 51. Area 51, the center of practically all alien conspiracies. With near constant rumors of extraterrestrial research taking place at this secret military development and testing base, you have to wonder if there's any truth to them all. If you ask Bob Lazar, then the answer is a big fat yes. See, Bob claimed to have been hired to work at Area 51 in the late 80s for an astonishing reason: to reverse engineer alien spacecraft. Lazar claimed all the way back in 1997 that the captured craft he was reverse engineering ran on an antimatter reactor, which was powered by a stable form of element 115, which wouldn't be officially created by our Earth scientists until 2003, and we can still barely stabilize it. Lazar said the reactor he studied was topped by a sphere the size of a basketball, which emitted a force field capable of repulsing human flesh. He explained that the craft was split into two main levels. The reactor was positioned at the center of the upper level with an antenna extending to the top, surrounded by 3 gravity amplifiers. He said these functioned as a sort of guide for the gravity wave that forms into a heart shape around the entire craft, narrowing at the bottom. These connected to gravity emitters on the lower level, which can rotate 180 degrees to output an anti-gravity wave, and that the craft would then travel belly first into this distortion field. Basically, according to Bob, flying saucers fly sideways rather than upright, with opposable engines allowing the craft to move in any direction. Not only that, Bob also claimed he read briefing documents describing the historical involvement of Earth for the past 10,000 years with extraterrestrial beings, described as the typical gray aliens that were about child size, of which he had seen cadavers of similar size. To this day, all organizations where Bob claims he worked or studied vehemently denies he was ever there. Yet George Knapp, an American journalist who investigated Bob's claims, said that Bob displayed a knowledge of the facility that would only be acquired by someone who'd been there. Of course, some claim it's all part of a cover-up. Many even suggest he is a somewhat inexperienced techie, yet the guy built a jet car for fun and has been featured in multiple newspapers for his creations. So he's clearly a distinguished engineer. Bob even claimed they used a specific biometric hand scanner at the base, which measured the length of bones in your hand to authorize access to the base. That the government denied this at first, but decades later, the Department of Defense admitted they did in fact use it at Area 51 in the 80s for the stealth fighter program, and Bob confirmed the one they declassified matched what he had used. At any time, either of those organizations could have simply said that, yes, Bob Lazar worked for them and they deeply regret to hear of his degenerate mental state or something like that. But no, they still insist they don't know who he is despite all that. Why? It's not to say we know he is telling the complete truth, but there's too many shadowy coincidences here for anyone to be comfortably skeptic. So are there any truth to Bob's claims? Well, he's maintained the same story for over 30 years at this point, and passed lie detector tests on the subject. So, maybe? It's worth noting that the guy has been convicted several times of crimes since his testimony, which his critics have used to discredit his story. But who knows? Was Bob telling the truth? Well, some of the sightings coming up might make you think he's telling the truth. Remember I told you that Tic Tac video wasn't an isolated incident? A similar encounter was filmed on the southeastern coast of America in early 2015. Those who recorded it have yet to come forward, but some crewmates and fellow pilots have provided some of the backstory, and it goes like this. Roughly 10 years after the initial Tic Tac sightings in the summer of 2004, a naval strike group led by the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt led training exercises somewhere off the coast of Virginia. The encounter was strikingly similar to the previous one explained. Anomalous radar tracks were spotted and initially dismissed. Gravity-defying hypersonic objects were being detected defying the laws of physics. After double-checking all their equipment, they were certain what they were seeing had to be real. Early interceptions were initially unsuccessful, until one day, two jets no more than a few tens of meters apart narrowly avoided a mid-air collision when something flew right in between them. Although the pilots themselves haven't come forward, fellow F-18 pilot Lieutenant Ryan Graves spoke to one of the pilots who landed and said the experience had visually spooked him. Here's what he had to say about the encounter at the UAP congressional hearing.
During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, two F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP. The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew would discuss the risk of UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs.
This time, the craft was described as a cube encased by a translucent sphere. Obviously, both pilots must have been incredibly startled, so it's hard to figure out exactly what they saw in such a short space of time. But I've created a few images of the craft for entertainment purposes, and I've added a little extra aliens for fun. They didn't mention seeing them, but I like to think they were there. Anyway, Lieutenant Ryan Graves said this wasn't an isolated incident, and that similar things had been seen by dozens of pilots for several months, and that the objects spotted could remain airborne for up to 12 hours at a time. A few months later, in 2015, when the USS Theodore Roosevelt had made its way over by the coast of Florida, during a separate incident, pilots captured another clip that shocked everyone involved.
Dude, there's a going on, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS, though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's a thing, it's rotating.
The interesting thing about this clip is that the craft captured seemed to rotate and fly in a fashion somewhat similar to that described by Bob Lazar on its side. The craft even has a heart-like shape, which resembles how Lazar claimed the crafts he reverse-engineered warped gravity around them. However, some debunkers claim the rotation seen in the video is an optical illusion caused by the derotation mechanism of the camera. That said, the two pilots themselves failed to recognize it as an image rotation. Surely, if anyone could spot image rotation, they would be the ones who would know what it looks like. Both pilots believe the craft actually rotated. Even Jeremy Corbell, an electro-optical engineer and expert in the ATF LIRE camera system, explained it's not an optical illusion. Besides, if it were an optical illusion, that doesn't explain what the pilots remarked about in the following clip.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
It seems nothing yet has explained how a whole fleet could travel cross-wind at that speed. With all that said, it's interesting to hear about the man responsible for making these videos public, Luis Elizondo. He was the head of a secret government-funded effort to investigate UFO sightings known as the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. In late 2017, he became so disillusioned with the government's efforts that he decided to resign. He claimed that certain individuals within the government are staunchly opposed to UFO research, and that the government is unconcerned about something that could affect national security. Indeed, many military personnel claim these sightings are common but underreported, as individuals fear for their career should they speak out and risk looking like a tinfoil hat wearer at the expense of another promotion. Certainly, there is a stigma around the UFO topic, which is precisely the reason the government now uses UAP instead of UFO to avoid the unwanted association with aliens, spaceships, and probing human backsides. Lieutenant Ryan Graves summarizes perfectly the sentiment around UFO sightings among the U.S. government during his speech to Congress.
My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2 deployments in Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Inherent Resolve. I have experienced advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice the concerns of more than 30 commercial aircrew and military veterans who have confided their similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences commercial pilots who fear professional repercussions, discourages witnesses, and is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial information hidden. Since 2021, all UAP videos are classified as secret or above. This level of secrecy not only impedes our understanding, but fuels speculation and mistrust.
In fact, in 2021, the U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a preliminary report on UAPs, and the official findings will chill you to the core. The report looked back on evidence gathered in the last 20 years from U.S. Navy reports and concluded that they basically had no idea what UAPs were. The UAPs could break the sound barrier without producing a sonic boom, move with no discernible means of propulsion, and travel with such speed and maneuverability that would typically destroy any craft. The report accepted that UAP recordings were most likely physical objects, and they are a possible safety issue that could pose a security threat. Ultimately, these individuals are some of the most reliable witnesses you could hope for, and their stories match up. They were joined with one other whistleblower at the congressional hearing, whose story is perhaps even more disturbing. This is former intelligence official David Grush, who dropped some bombshells. Not only did he claim that the U.S. government has had contact with alien species, but also that they've recovered downed spacecraft and the remains of non-human pilots. To make matters even crazier, Grush also claimed that the U.S. has come across actively malevolent alien races, which means we could be in some serious danger. Yikes. But if all this really is true, why the heck haven't we heard about it until now? Well, as you'd probably guessed, Grush blamed the government for orchestrating an elaborate cover-up. Not content with simply pulling the wool over our eyes, he asserted that U.S. agents have actively targeted and came for people who threatened to reveal these secrets in the past. Oh man. So, if Grush ever goes missing, I think we all know where fingers will be pointed. Of course, the U.S. government responded exactly how you'd expect them to, by denying everything. In July of 2023, during the congressional hearing mentioned already, while under oath, he reiterated that there was a massive cover-up going on, and that the U.S. government had indeed recovered non-human remains.
If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And even specified further on his claims of alien races posing a threat.
So, at one point you had said that there has been harmful activity or aggressive activity. Has any of the activity been aggressive, been hostile in your reports?
I know of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured. And the activity, and I got
by UAPs or by people within the federal government?
both.
Okay.
Unfortunately, Grush couldn't answer a lot of questions publicly for legal reasons, but did mention he was willing to speak with congressmen privately and reveal more information. Who knows what secrets he has to share? What do you think? Is this the most credible evidence of alien life yet, or just another chancer seeking their 15 minutes of fame? Let me know down in the comments. Now, before I move on, there is one part of Mr. Grush's testimony which is particularly striking. Let's give it a listen.
At the time, due to my extensive executive level intelligence support duties, I was cleared to literally all relevant compartments and in a position of extreme trust, both in my military and civilian capacities. I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
If true, this would support the statements made by Bob Lazar, as well as the other whistleblowers at the hearing, along with thousands of various incidents recorded over the decades. Now, let's delve into some of the most credible sightings that often go overlooked. Foo Fighters. November 1944. A U.S. fighter plane tore through the night skies above the Rhine Valley on the French-German border. In the gloom, one lieutenant noticed a string of ominous glowing lights off in the distance. Believing them to be German air weapons, they turned to fight. But the lights suddenly disappeared. And this was only the beginning of a long list of unexplainable sightings. Other wartime pilots reported strange luminous orbs, flashing lights, and even an unknown object flying close beside them. They came to call these mysterious objects Foo Fighters, after a line from a popular comic book at the time called Smokey Stover. And yeah, there's also a band with the same name, but I don't think Dave Grohl was hanging around in the 1940s. So what were those Foo Fighters? Well, some believe the soldiers didn't see anything at all and were actually suffering from combat fatigue. In other words, the stress and trauma of the war had affected them so much they'd started hallucinating. But people that knew them said they seemed very level-headed. Others put forward the idea that the Foo Fighters were actually experimental enemy craft. But wouldn't we know by now if that was the answer? Indeed, many people think they really were alien visitors, come to observe and learn about human aircraft. If that's the case, though, why don't we see UFOs following us whenever we go on vacation? Well, think about it. The Second World War was the most destructive conflict in human history. Maybe extraterrestrials heard all the commotion from a galaxy far away and came to find out what the fuss was about. Then, after seeing how stupid we can be, they noped out again and sightings dried up. Can't say I really blame them. Don't worry though, just like and subscribe to Be Amazed for all the knowledge injections you need to impress the aliens when they next come back around. All sorted? Wicked. Let's get back to it. Recess to remember. Kids aren't exactly the most reliable sources. I mean, they say a lot of stupid stuff. But what about when a whole class of kids has the same exact story? And what if all of them insist the story is the truth for nearly 30 years afterwards? Okay, now you have my interest. Back in 1994, a bunch of children attending aerial school outside Rua, Zimbabwe, had the most eventful day imaginable. And no, it wasn't Pizza Friday. During their morning recess, no less than 62 students saw a strange disc-like craft land near the schoolyard. Curious, many of them walked over to investigate. Suddenly, the craft's doors opened and a humanoid creatures clad in black stepped out before the now terrified children. Then the beings slowly approached. But it seems they came in peace. Rather than attacking, they, wait for it, telepathically beamed messages about the importance of environmentalism into the children's minds before abruptly leaving. Right. While not all students saw the craft that fateful day, many of the kids that did have been adamant about the events that took place ever since. Looking at it from a skeptical mind, it's possible the whole thing was just a case of mass hysteria. That's when a group of people suffer a collective delusion. We aren't entirely sure why this happens, but anxiety is thought to be one of the causes. Just 2 days prior to the incident, there'd been several UFO sightings across southern Africa. This created an atmosphere of anxiety that could have become hysteria, which the kids manifested in an extraterrestrial encounter of their own. I'm not convinced. Some of them even drew pictures, and they have startling similarities between them. And would children really think to work environmentalism into their story? I'm not saying this is aliens, but there's definitely something more than hysteria at play here. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. The Belgian UFO Wave. In Belgium, 1989, a string of UFO sightings took place that would mark the beginning of a tremendous wave of encounters that shocked the world. On a fateful November night, over 30 different groups of people recorded seeing something odd in the skies above them. A strange triangular object with 3 distinct glowing lights beneath it. Spooky, right? Well, for the next 5 or so months, over 2,000 more sightings were reported across the country. Jeez, that's a lot of alien boys. The Belgian government actually got fed up with hearing these reports and, assuming the US were testing some aircraft nearby, got in touch with them to find out. But the Americans told them no such tests were taking place. With little going on, the Belgian government saw only one way to get to the bottom of the situation: getting up close and personal with one of the supposed craft. So, when reports of a sighting came in one March night, jets were scrambled and sent to meet with the enigmatic visitor. Frustratingly, the fighter pilots couldn't see the object itself, but they did just about catch it on radar. The radar blip started moving erratically and jumping great distances before accelerating way beyond a man-made craft's capability and just vanishing. After that, encounters quietly died down. While the Belgian government were quick to dismiss the whole affair, they couldn't provide any compelling alternative explanations. It's possible the sheer gravitas of the initial sightings inspired paranoia among citizens, making them more susceptible to the idea of seeing triangular shapes in the sky. But that doesn't explain the mysterious radar blip. I think the answer is obvious. These were aliens, just dropping by for that sweet Belgian chocolate. Skinny Bob. Most phony alien encounters involve off-puttingly grainy photos of faraway spaceships. That's because it'd take a whole lot of cash, time, and skill to convincingly fake an alien up close, which is exactly what makes Skinny Bob such an enigma. No, it's not the name of my estranged nephew, it's an alleged alien. Let me explain. In 2011, a Reddit user named Ivan posted a startling video clip to the website, claiming it was recorded by the KGB. This is Skinny Bob. Crikey. I don't know about you, but I'm seriously creeped out. What exactly are we looking at? Is this real? It certainly looks it, right? According to Ivan, the alien was on a diplomatic mission from the Zeta Reticuli star system and had been sent to discuss matters of mutual concern. What exactly those matters were wasn't disclosed, but supposedly what you're seeing is an excerpt from an interview with the being. Visual effects expert Randy Sharp, who worked on the likes of I Am Legend and Watchmen, looked at the footage and gave some startling testimony. According to him, if it was a fake, it would have truly tested the tech available in 2011 and took somebody with a crazy level of skill and knowledge to pull it off. On top of that, it would have cost an arm and a leg, somewhere in the ballpark of $250,000. So, given that nobody has ever claimed ownership of the video or tried to profit from it, such an expensive prank seems illogical. Is it real then? Who knows? I guess we should keep an eye out for Skinny Bob appearing in any more movies. Though, it has been over a decade, so maybe he's more of a Fat Bob these days. The Phoenix Lights. Okay, so far we've covered some very widely observed UFO sightings, but nothing can match the sheer number of people that reported seeing what became known as the Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights were 2 events that happened on the evening of March 13, 1997, in the skies above Nevada and Arizona. The first event started at around 7:30 p.m., when a witness in Henderson, Nevada, reported seeing an array of glowing orbs in the sky. From there, they slowly made their way across state lines to Phoenix, Arizona, a near 300-mile journey that was seen by thousands upon thousands of people, including actor Kurt Russell. The lights made the shape of a V, with some observers claiming they could faintly see the craft itself through the clouds. Then they passed over the city and disappeared without a trace. What? And it gets weirder. At around 10 p.m., loads of people in Phoenix also reported seeing a separate row of bright lights hovering in the sky. According to the author and renowned UFO skeptic Robert Schaefer, these lights actually originated from two separate U.S. Air Force training exercises with A-10 jets. One exercise consisted of the planes flying in a triangle formation and another of them firing flares. What a buzzkill. But it makes sense. Case closed, right? Wrong. In 2007, former Arizona governor and witness John Fife Symington III came out to speak on the lights. As a pilot, he claimed to know every aircraft imaginable, and whatever he saw that night was not something he recognized. Not content with just discrediting the official explanation, he also expressed his support for the government to investigate further. To this day, however, we still don't have a solid answer. So I guess for now, the whole thing is very much up in the air. Sorry. Oumuamua. Don't you just hate uninvited guests? Well, back in 2017, our solar system got one of the most mysterious uninvited guests imaginable. A mysterious red object somewhere between 300 and 3,000 feet long was observed moving past the sun. The visitor was dubbed Oumuamua by scientists, a Hawaiian word meaning a messenger from afar arriving first. Fitting, because it certainly came from afar, and it was the first object of its kind we've ever seen. Naturally then, its sudden appearance was very exciting for astronomers, but it was also unnerving. Just what was this thing? Well, it was cigar-shaped and traveled at astounding speeds of up to 55 miles a second, a whopping 20 miles per second faster than the average speed of a comet. But unlike comets, it had no visible tail of space dust behind it. The strange object raced through our solar system for 11 days, then left again, never to return. Curiouser and curiouser. As you might have guessed, many were quick to cry alien, and understandably so. It seemed to defy all explanation. That being said, people have tried to explain it. Some believe Oumuamua was a block of solid hydrogen, while others are sure it was a comet after all, just one with strange, mysterious properties. Scientists say it was a bit of both, a comet filled with hydrogen ice. Remember how much faster it was than ordinary comets? Well, the clever clogs at NASA reckon that when it passed by our sun, the heat released the comet's hydrogen, causing the burst of extra speed. They also say there was no tail because hydrogen doesn't have the momentum to pull space dust behind it. But what do you think? Was Oumuamua really just a big ol' space rock? Or is all that just smoke and mirrors? I mean, if an alien spaceship did come to our solar system to monitor us, wouldn't our governments want to cover it up to stop mass panic? I'd love to hear your theories in the comments below. Crystal clear. Let's be real. UFO photos almost always look like they've been taken using a toaster. They're either super blurry or don't resemble UFOs at all. With that in mind, I'd like to present you with something absolutely incredible. A UFO photo that actually looks like it was taken using a functioning camera. Whoa! All jokes aside, this is the Calvine photo, widely known as the clearest UFO snap ever taken. Captured in Scotland by two young chefs in 1990, the incredible image shows a strange diamond-shaped object flying in front of a conventional plane. The two chefs sent it to a newspaper, but instead of publishing it, the paper passed the image to the British Ministry of Defense, where it promptly disappeared for 30 long years. Then, in 2020, British academic journalist David Clarke finally tracked it down. After first hearing about the story in 2009, but without the photographic evidence itself, it had captivated him ever since. Eventually, he tracked down a former Royal Air Force officer who'd held on to a print of it. Apparently, the retired officer had been waiting for someone to call him about it for years, so was more than willing to share the pic. And unlike a lot of other UFO sightings, this one can't be easily debunked. Andrew Robinson, senior photography lecturer at Sheffield Hallam University, analyzed the photo and concluded that whatever the object is, it's definitely there in front of the camera. So there's no editing trickery going on. The RAF officer that held onto it also said that when the photo was sent in, the witnesses claimed the craft made no noise whatsoever. Weird. Who the witnesses actually are, though, we don't know. Though the names of the original photos should have been released in 2021, British authorities have refused to do so until 2076, citing privacy concerns. Suspicious much? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments. The Battle of LA. You remember the Foo Fighters I told you about earlier? You know, those strange lights that followed pilots around during the Second World War. Well, that wasn't the only time aliens allegedly came down to investigate us in wartime. Oh no. There was the Battle of Los Angeles. Shortly after joining the war, the USA was still reeling from the Japanese attack on their naval base at Pearl Harbor. The country was on high alert, preparing for the possibility of another strike on U.S. soil. So, when air raid sirens sounded in LA County one February night in 1942, troops ran desperately to the anti-aircraft guns and started firing. Soon the sky was filled with smoke, shrapnel, and fire in a defensive barrage that lasted over an hour. Then, silence. But as the sun rose, soldiers realized something very peculiar. There seemed to have been no enemy at all. Absolutely nothing had been shot down. So what happened? Well, some witnesses claimed to have seen a single balloon-like craft in the sky that night, something ufologists are adamant is evidence of extraterrestrial activity. A now iconic photo showing countless searchlights focusing on an unknown object served as fuel for the fire. Could there be something alien amidst all the bright lights? Well, possibly. But it turns out the original image was heavily edited prior to being published in newspapers, so it would be clearer to see in black and white print. What's more, the U.S. Air Force concluded that a series of meteorological air balloons were released over Los Angeles at the time, which probably started the scare. So no aliens this time, although there's always a chance it was a cover-up. The Turkish UFO Incident. Many UFO sightings are highly publicized cases that have inspired heated debate over the years. Then you have far lesser-known ones, like the Turkish UFO Incident. Between 2007 and 2009, 12 different witnesses came forward claiming they'd seen a strange metallic craft in the skies off the coast of northwest Turkey. But we don't have to take their word for it. Plenty of them filmed it. It's shaky as hell, yes, but if we zoom in really close on a separate sighting of the thing, oh, you can definitely see two figures moving around inside. Authorities were quick to try to dismiss the sightings as some kind of elaborate hoax, but that proved very hard to do. Indeed, after some of the shocking footage was received by two separate state-sponsored boards, they came up with nothing. Nada. In fact, they were forced to conclude that it was genuine. Now, that's not to say that they believed it was aliens, but they did conclude that the clip wasn't edited, and that the vehicle didn't conform to any known human craft. Holy cow. Honestly, I'm shocked that this one hasn't had more exposure. You can practically see the two pilots inside arguing about whether they should ask for directions. Ant abducted. It was an unassuming night in October of 1957. In an effort to avoid the hot daytime sun, 23-year-old Brazilian Antonio Villas-Boas had decided to work in the fields of his farm in the evening. Suddenly, he was distracted from his labor by an ominous red star appearing in the dark sky. It grew bigger and bigger until, he realized it was headed right for him. Antonio watched in horror as the star revealed itself to be some kind of alien spaceship preparing to land. Then he noped right out of there, or at least he tried to. His tractor wouldn't start, so he was forced to flee on foot through the fields. But something was chasing him. And whatever it was too fast. Antonio yelped as he was tackled by several humanoid creatures who subdued him and dragged him onto the ship. While aboard, he was stripped naked and covered in a strange gel. Then the creatures took a blood sample from his chin and left him alone in a locked room filled with noxious gas, which made him feel seriously ill. As he sat there, naked, gooey, and sick on an alien spacecraft, he probably thought this night couldn't get any weirder. He was wrong. Suddenly, a nude female alien entered the room and, seduced him. Yep. One thing led to another, and Antonio wound up doing the nasty with the alien babe. Then after, completing his task, he was given a quick tour of the ship before being dropped off back home. Okay, so that wasn't a fever dream I had last night. It's supposedly a true account as told by Antonio himself. I'm sure you're pretty suspicious of his story, as most were when he first came out with it, but just wait. Antonio was examined by medical professionals shortly after the alleged incident and was found to be suffering from radiation sickness. Now, I'm not saying that means his wild tale is true, but I'm having trouble figuring out how else he could have gotten radiation poisoning. Either way, our spacefaring farmer stuck to the story for the rest of his life until he passed away in 1991. Was old Antonio really a victim of alien abduction? Or was it all just a ploy for attention? Now that he's gone, it seems we'll never know for sure. The Baikal Enigma. Lake Baikal. This Russian body of water is the oldest and deepest lake in the world, with a colossal maximum depth of some 5,400 feet. That means 2 to-scale replicas of the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa, could fit in there stacked on top of each other. Crikey. Naturally then, the lake has inspired countless legends and been the site of an awful lot of alien activity. Many people over the years have reported seeing strange lights, craft, and even mysterious figures skulking around its shoreline. In 2009, one Sergei Konichkik and his son stepped outside to watch the sunset over the waters. To their shock, they saw 2 strange glowing orbs rise out of the lake and start floating above it. Thankfully, Sergei managed to snag a picture of these ominous lights before they vanished back under the murky depths. So, whatever they saw, it was definitely real. But sightings don't just take place around the lake, they also happen inside it. In 1982, a squad of Russian military divers reportedly encountered a group of abnormally tall humanoid creatures swimming 160 feet below the surface of Baikal. The group attempted to subdue and capture one of the strange beings, only to be forcefully ejected from the water by them. Now, if you surface too quickly while diving, you'll suffer from decompression sickness, or the bends, a potentially fatal condition caused by the rapid change in pressure. Sure enough, several of the divers passed away shortly after surfacing. Jeez. Those aliens don't sound too friendly. Sure, this story could have been just made up, but when combined with Sergei's photo and the countless other tales surrounding the lake, you can't help but think something must be going on over there. MIB. I'm sure you've at least heard of the Men in Black movies. Apart from that awful spin-off, they're a lot of fun. But did you know that they're based on a real-life phenomenon that's downright terrifying? See, when people report extraterrestrial activity, they sometimes get a visit from the real-life MIB. Only they don't get Will Smith knocking on their door. Creepy men clad entirely in black have supposedly tracked down witnesses and either intimidated them into silence or, in some stories, made them outright disappear. Maybe making this video wasn't such a good idea. One particularly strange story occurred in 2009 and was caught on camera. Here you can see 2 insidious interlopers in a hotel in Ontario, Canada. 2 bizarre men dressed in black wandered into the lobby. They had no eyebrows or eyelashes, seemed to be wearing wigs underneath their hats, and were identical in appearance. Then, according to witnesses, the duo began grilling the bellboy to let them see the manager, Shane Sovar. When the bellboy told them that Shane wasn't working, they didn't believe him and began rummaging around as if they owned the place. Whatever they were looking for, it seems they didn't find it. Eventually, the strangers disappeared without a trace and were never heard from again. But why were they there in the first place? Well, Shane had reported seeing a large triangular UFO above Niagara Falls the year before. He'd mostly forgotten the incident, but it seems that not everybody had. Creepy, huh? Most ufologists believe the men in black are government agents tasked with suppressing word on alien sightings. But what if it's more than that? No hair of any kind, identical appearances? What if these guys are aliens themselves? Would it not be in their best interests to keep their existence under wraps so they can carry on doing, well, whatever it is they do? Oh man, I can see 2 men in black suits approaching my front door right now. I think that's enough alien evidence for one day. Have you ever had any extraterrestrial encounters? Let me know down in the comments below, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.